this is all the stuff I have right now, okay? It's a lot.
You know, every time I look at these colors, it's so chaotic, and they're like high-key kind of ugly. I'm a little concerned.
I have officially finished all 16 of the octagons of the Persian tiles blanket.
Okay, so I'm kind of getting tired of sewing these right now.
Hey folks, it's me, Rena from Sandworks Crochet, and I'm back with the final part of me making the Persian tiles blanket with thrifted yarn. I have 2 videos before this where I thrifted yarn and decided to make a Persian tiles blanket. I have completed the octagons, and now I need to complete the rest of the squares and triangles and put the thing together for the final stretch of this video. I'm going to be doing the same thing I did with the octagons, where I basically just make all of them at once. I have technically 1 square completely done, and then I have started off camera just making squares. This is what I got so far, and I've actually been using the small scraps of the yarn I did have from my initial trip to the craft thrift store. They were way too small to be used in the octagons because as that octagon got bigger, it just ate more and more yarn. But now I have smaller scraps, and I think I'll be able to use up all of them because these do not take up nearly as much yarn. Unfortunately, I'm also not making as many squares though, because for example, so I'm almost done with this square because I decided to do this off camera for whatever reason. So I basically need 1 more round of like another color, and then after that I'll be doing my standard border colors, which is the black, white, brown color combination that I did on my previous squares to tie everything together. But basically each square requires 4 different colors, and I have 9 of them. So I do think I'm going to be having a lot of extra yarn with this, but at the same time I can at least get rid of the small scraps. And I think the triangles are a similar vein too, and I need 12 of those, but then that's half the yarn that the squares use. It's a whole thing. I'm gonna just get going and start working on these.
Okay, so here's the thing. I started stitching together the squares and stuff, and I was like, oh, okay, I am going to stitch together the octagons together and whatever, but then I actually thought about it for a little bit and realized I'm going to need the other components before I can start stitching everything together. And so now this is just going to be on my floor, taking up space until I finished the squares and the triangles and everything. So yay.
So when I say I have tiny scraps, these are what I'm talking about. I definitely can salvage them for like a couple more, but I'm really glad it's like down to this, honestly. Yeah, that's not gonna work. Okay, I'll save this for a different one. So, but if this blue one didn't work, I don't think this one would work either. I know my pink one wouldn't work. This one I think should work just because I have like another one I can attach onto it. And then I think this one will work. I think these 2 will work just because I know I have more of these, and then I'm gonna have to dip into some of the other colors. Okay, I've definitely actually used up like the itty bitty scraps of yarn, which is good. I like that because then I just have less itty bitty scraps of yarn. Technically, only these are left, and I guess plus a pink one. These two, yeah, that's not gonna work. Probably get like a 4th row out of this one, but these two definitely not. Like this one doesn't even meet the 3rd row. I'm gonna go grab some more yarn and some colors so I can continue working on these squares, and then I'll check back in some other time. Okay, I got 8 squares done here. I think I've actually decided that I want to work on the triangles next before I start doing the repeat black, white, brown rows here. So I'm going to work on the triangles now.
Because I'm not frogging this or using a different color or whatever. So however many more rows this gives me, that'll be how big the bag is. Bucket for whenever we make some baskets later. And then I kind of just piled everything else up into that box that's on the floor.
So here's the thing. Originally, my plan for this was to work on this when I got back from my trip, and then the amount of time that it would take for me to make the squares and the triangles would take just as long as it took to make the octagons. And I'm like, oh yeah, like, okay, this will be a lengthy process, but I actually decided to start making these, you know, before my trip, like right now. And it's so funny because I thought this would take so much longer to do, but I'm flying through these squares and triangles. I do think that I won't be able to like finish this, you know, before my trip, because that actually is delusional, especially since I have to finish the squares, finish the triangles, and then sew everything together, and that's not happening. Like, I know that for sure. But the fact that I'm able to just fly through all of the squares and triangles, I'm like, oh wow, like truly the lengthiest part of making this blanket were the octagons. Just in general, like the octagons truly were the longest part of making this blanket. Everything else is easy, or everything else just feels easier, honestly, comparatively. And it's kind of wild almost, you know? Like I don't know how to explain it otherwise. But yeah, like I just wasn't expecting this to be as quick as it actually is. So that's all I gotta say.
Okay, so let me show you how far I am. I have basically completed all of the triangles, both corner and regular triangles of the blanket. And okay, completed is the wrong answer. I have done all of the parts where it's multiple colors. So I no longer need the different colors of yarn anymore. I still have to do the border colors of the triangles and the squares, but I'm at a point now where I can at least put up all of the colorful yarn that I've had. Now I will say, I still have a lot of yarn. I used a lot of yarn too. Do not discount the fact that I have actually used a lot of yarn in making this blanket, but I also still have a lot of yarn left. Thankfully, I have managed to use up most of the tiny scraps, and now I just have a bunch of scraps from when I cut apart the granny square all-in-one yarn, but that's beside the point. But I can tell you right now, I definitely have less yarn than I started with. Some of you might be wondering, what am I gonna do with all this yarn I have now? Well, most of it will stay in my stash. However, I am going to redonate a couple of skeins. Specifically some of the vintage yarn skeins. I'm not getting rid of all the vintage yarn skeins. I would say most of them still have a use, but there were some skeins where it just wasn't for me, and I am going to redonate some of those yarns just because I know I'm not going to use it otherwise. I did actually use it in the blanket, but I was not a fan of working with it. So I am going to redonate that. I have some other yarns I want to donate anyway, so it's not the end of the world, but I am going to keep most of the skeins that I do have. And again, I might incorporate them into some other things later in the future. We'll see where I go with that. Now, what I need to do is start weaving in all the ends of all those granny squares and triangles I made, because There's a lot of them. I don't think I'm gonna be able to do that until after I get back in like a couple weeks, but yeah. Hey folks, I'm back from my trip and I've done a little bit of work on the Persian tiles blankets. Specifically, I have woven in the ends for the squares, the 9 squares, and I added a black border on everything. I just need to add the white and the brown next, and so I've just been working a little bit at it. Okay, I have completed all of the squares for the Persian tiles blankets. Added the border and everything, laid everything out. Now I just have to complete the triangles and then we can start putting everything together. Okay, folks, I have weaved in most of the ends of the triangles, specifically of like, you know, the ends that are kind of closed off. I kept the magic ring part unwoven in because I know at some point when I do put the blanket together and crochet the border, I'm going to have to get into this. It's still a little bit more manipulatable to kind of crochet into this part when I am putting it together versus when it's not, when it's woven in, you know? I don't know if any of that made sense, but whatever. I didn't weave in the magic rings for the triangles, but I've woven in all the other rows for most things. So now I'm adding on the black, white, and brown borders, and then I'm just, you know, doing the single crochets, kind of doing my standard crochet over the ends here, so that way it's a cleaner weave in as you go type of situation. And kind of like the squares and the triangles and the octagons, I'm working on every single component at a time, so that way they're all kind of done with the same part at once. I definitely have enough of the vintage black yarn to go around. As I've told you before, I ran out of the vintage white, but I'm just using like Pound of Love for the white part because I don't have any more thrifted white anymore. So at that point, I'm just using my stash. And then the brown, I still have a decent amount of the brown left. I'll definitely have enough of this for the remaining components, but I think I'm gonna run out of black for the blanket border, which again is a good thing because that means I can get it out of my stash. But I think once I run out of this vintage black, I'll use more stash yarn. And at the end of the day, this is why I decided to use the black and the white as like border colors, because once I run out of them, I have black and white in my stash to pull from and do whatever with. But yeah, I will just slowly work through this. I think once I finish the black part, I'm gonna go on a run and run some errands, and then I'll work more on the white and then the brown. But I am very close to finishing this video. I'm really glad because I actually really want to post these videos soon, and I kind of want all of them done before I post them. I'm really excited for this series to come out. I hope it does well because I put in a lot of time and effort into both making this, but also into the editing as well. I'd say this is my most ambitiously edited video series on this channel so far. So I'm pretty stoked about it personally. Okay, so I have all of the components made up and ready to go. I finished all the triangles. I do need to arrange them, so let me do that real quick. Okay, so I guess I can start connecting all these now. For some of them, not all of the pieces, I intentionally kept a really long end so I can sew. I didn't remember to do it with all of them, but I think I can at least start. I didn't finish weaving in all of the ends, but minor details, you know?
Okay, so I'm like maybe a third of the way through sewing these together. I kind of got tired of working on the floor, so I ended up kind of picking up pieces and sewing them together. But because I don't want to lose the arrangement of everything, I've gone through and put stitch markers in all the corners. So hopefully this will make it a little bit more transportable so I can move to the couch because I need a couch. Okay, so high key, sewing everything is kind of painful, and I would probably say this is the hardest part of making this blanket. Not the squares, not the weaving in of ends, not like making 16 octagons, but it's just putting everything together. But here's the thing, I intentionally left extra long tails on a couple of the squares to make it easier so I didn't have to constantly cut yarn to stitch everything, and right now I'm using those long tails to help sew everything together. But even then, I'm still gonna have to go back and cut yarn to stitch the rest of the stuff because, you know, the tails are only so long. It's a whole thing. But I have so many things here. There's just so much blanket to weave in, and this blanket is kind of big, and also because it's acrylic, and now that the weather is getting, you know, warmer, which on one hand is great because I hate cold weather, and I can actually go outside and be a person. But on the other hand, carrying around this big acrylic blanket while it's hot outside, it kind of makes it low-key unbearable. So yeah, that's my progress on how everything's going for stitching everything in. Also, for folks wondering, I think I mentioned this earlier, but I forgot already, but I am using mattress stitch to connect everything together. Theoretically, my preferred method of joining things together is join as you go, but for a blanket like this, that's not exactly possible. So I am just using mattress stitch, and it is working out well. It is time consuming, which is why it's taken me so long. It's kind of funny because I only somewhat recently learned how to do mattress stitch, in the sense that I would see instructions for it online all the time, but then never really understood or conceptualized it. But it was only recently have I actually been able to conceptualize mattress stitch. And so now that I actually understand mattress stitch and how to do it, I am doing it, and it looks great, and I am very happy that I know how to do it now. So I prefer mattress stitch over the slip stitch join, and frankly I don't know how to do the slip stitch join. Every time I try,
it doesn't look very good. I feel like I mess up. I don't know if it's because I'm not blocking my squares or anything, but every time I do a slip stitch join, it just looks bad. Probably, I think it's because I have really tight tension. So tight tension, slip stitches, and then like somewhat looser items, it just doesn't work. So, but yeah, I'm using mattress stitch, that's all. I've officially used up the long tails that I have for these to weave in everything, and you know, there's still a couple of gaps, so I need to go grab some extra yarn to do that. Okay, fun fact, this was originally a 1 pound skein of the Caron 1 pound, and you know, I used that as like, you know, the border colors for all the squares and stuff, and I tried to cake up the remaining and it just barely fit on my yarn winder because I have a pretty, I guess, standard size yarn winder. I really hope I actually finish this once I'm done with everything, because that'll just be one less skein of yarn in my room. And I have quite a bit of the thrifted yarn left over.
So it'll probably be a lot of, you know, having to put things up afterwards, because I'm sure it's going to be a lot of, I can't remember the name, I can't remember the designer.
I just finished seaming up all of these hexagons, and now there's still more to do for the blanket. So the next thing I have to do is actually make the border of this blanket and also weave everything in and then block it. Now, some of you might be wondering, Rena, why haven't you blocked any of these squares? Aren't you supposed to be blocking these squares? The answer is yes. I theoretically should. And here's a couple of reasons. So, one, this is acrylic. I know those of you in the comments will be saying, hey, you can steam block acrylic. Yes, you can. But you know how there's a way to steam block acrylic? By putting it in the washing machine and dryer. To be fair, I intentionally made this with acrylic because I was planning on donating it anyway. So what I plan to do after I finish everything and do that, I'm planning on sticking this in my washer and dryer, because the act of washing and drying is essentially the same as steaming. That is why I have not blocked these pieces, because I'm just gonna do it in the washer and dryer. Could that potentially make me eat my words? Maybe. But at the same time, it was gonna be washed anyway at some point, whether I did it or whoever I donate it to does. So, I don't know. And again, I intentionally chose acrylic for this purpose because I don't believe in a blanket that cannot be put in a washing machine. I'm gonna go ahead and work on the border. Hopefully the border can eat up my yarn, because that would be great if it does. And yeah. Hello, friends. I am so close to finishing this blanket. It's just within my arm's reach. In an ideal world, I'd like to finish this weekend. I don't think it'll be the end of the world if I don't finish it this weekend, but I either want to finish it this week or next week, just because I've already scheduled my Persian tiles videos, and so I'd like to finish it before everything is posted. I want them all in consecutive weeks. It does help that I only post once a week, so that's basically 3 weeks worth of content at that point. I'm kind of like weaving in a little bit of my ends as I go, kind of. So most of my ends have been weaved in, which is good. I like that. You know, obviously a couple stragglers here. I did the first 2 rounds of the border, which is a single crochet as well as a granny cluster. I think I need another round of granny clusters, and then it'll be the last 3 rows will be single crochet. The stitches basically connecting all of the triangles and the octagons kind of together. It had you do single crochets across the ends with triangles, and then it has you do half double crochets across the part with the octagons, possibly to kind of make up for some things being bulkier than others, to make the edges smoother. I don't know. I will also say I'm very surprised that I didn't use up all of my vintage black yarn, because I thought I would not have enough, but I guess I was wrong. Now I just need to use
my white yarn for my next set of grinding clusters, and then the last 3 rows is going to be alternating brown, white, brown. And that white is Lime Brand Pound of Love, which I think I mentioned I was using because I ran out of the vintage white of the thrifted yarn, but yeah, let's get going. I should probably count the amount of clusters that I put, but I don't really feel like doing that. And honestly, I might just do a little bit vibes based, but it is what it is at this point. I think if there are straggling ends I do see on here that are like annoying me, I probably will leave a little bit of them in. Like, oh, this one for example. Okay, so update. I finished the blanket and then I washed it. I put it in the washer and dryer. Everything's fine. We're good. But let me do my reveal. How do I do this? Okay, so. Now that I have finished the Persian Towels blanket, I am going to pack this up and ship it to Warm Up America because, as I said in the beginning, I was planning on donating this. But that concludes my entire series of using thrifted yarn to make the Persian Tiles blanket. It came out great, honestly. I'm very proud of this. I will say, towards the end, I was starting to lose a little bit of steam, but I got through and I can now say that I've made one of these and I'm very happy about it. So yeah, this is it. But yeah, let me know down in the comments, have you ever made the Persian Towels blanket? How long did it take you? If you haven't, do you want to? And if you have, will you make another one? This is the end of probably my most ambitious project of the year so far. I have other crazy projects that I do on this channel, kind of. When I'm not yapping, I have other projects and video ideas that I have on this channel. I want to try doing more like bigger projects, so I might consider doing another video series kind of like this, where instead of just one-off videos. So we'll see how that works out. Let me know what you thought of this entire saga, if you enjoyed it, if you don't like it, and yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Bye!